Benjamin, thank you so much for this question. I really love this question. The question is, how can we tell what is noise versus what isn't on a graph like this? So first thing I want to talk about or explain is what we're looking at here. So essentially what we're looking at is a log 20 scale of voltage, 0 being 1 volt RMS, negative 20 being 100 millivolts, negative 50 being like 0.001, and so on. If you want, there are two things you can reference. One is the actual formula here. The other are calculators where you can plug in a voltage or dBV and it'll do the calculations for you. Second thing I want to talk about is what is all this data? Essentially, an analyzer like the one we're looking at takes a bunch of samples of the voltage on the RCA line. This one in particular is taking 192,000 samples per second, and it's plotting them over time. So if we were to zoom in, I'm generating a 1 kilohertz signal right now. You can see all the little samples that it's taking, each one representing 192,000th of a second. So all of that data over a period of time can be computed through something called Fast Fourier Transform to turn this graph that we're looking at here, which is a time-based graph worth of data, into a frequency domain graph. And the way that works is in your Fast Fourier Transform signal, you could basically select the amount of samples you want to calculate. So if we're taking 192,000 a second, we're taking 32,000, which represents a period of time relative to that second. And then what the formula does is basically look at the amount of up and down, basically wobble, and that's how it ties it to a frequency, right? Like 0 hertz, 10 hertz, 100 hertz, 1,000 hertz, etc. And right now, we see we have the dominant frequency that I was speaking about, right? We have a generator that we're generating a 1 kilohertz signal, and we're generating it at 100 millivolts RMS, which is what we're detecting here, so that's perfect. So all the other noise here is basically background noise or due to the device, right? The voltage here is so low, it's like 0.00001%. It's basically can't get any more accurate than this, at least the device I'm using. So this is the noise floor of my particular device, and this is the dominant signal that it's detecting because I have it looped back from the generator. So now, when I run this particular drill on it, what it's doing is it's detecting the additional spikes that are being caused by the electromagnetic interference, and it's plotting those in a graph that's easy to understand. This right now, what we're looking at is a logarithmic graph. We could turn it to a linear graph, which means that instead of going from 0, 100, 1,000, this is linear from 0 to 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, all the way, right, to 20 kilohertz. But you could see we have noise all the way up to about, actually all the way across the spectrum that we're generating from here. So all of this, negative 100 dB, V in this case is very, very little voltage. So how do we calculate the amount of noise relative to the dominant signal? That's what harmonic distortion is all about, right? So when we're looking at this, we're saying what is the percentage of distortion that we're getting on top of our 1 kilohertz signal. Right now it's super clean, 001. If we do the drill trick, that jumps to 0.1, which is basically 100 times more noise. So you can tell that the noise relative to the signal really matters. If we were running a full volt RMS, which is 0 dBV, that would be much smaller, the amount that it jumps. And we could test that theory by, let's go 12 dBV. Let's put this at 0. And let's run the test again. So 003. See, it doesn't jump as much because our dominant signal is much stronger than our background noise. This is why I made videos in the past saying run the highest RMS voltage you can on your RCA that your op amps and your preamp circuit is happy with, because it'll give you a better signal to noise ratio. So your SNR floor is higher. That's why running 100 millivolts to your preamp and using the gain on the amp has limited value because you'll pick up all that noise. The other thing I want to show, let me go back to 100 millivolts just so I could visualize this a little bit better. I'll run a 20 kilohertz signal here, sorry, a 20 hertz signal. So we'll go very, very low in terms of frequency. And I'm going to really zoom in here. And my goal is to show you, visualize it over this type of view. So you could see how we are zoomed in, yes, right? We're taking our 100 millivolt signal and we're zooming in on a small portion of that 20 hertz wave. But hopefully now you could visualize how this noise is impacting that 20 hertz. It's no longer clean. So your subwoofer, if you're passing this to your subwoofer and you're using the gain on your amplifier to really amplify this in the preamp circuit and then, through the actual amplifier itself, you're playing all this additional noise in your subwoofer. So that's one way to view it. Hopefully that makes sense. And going back to this guy, logarithmic, because it's easiest to work with. That's our dominant signal, right? Our 20 hertz. All of this noise that you were seeing is basically, what is that? That's negative, even though that's negative 100, you saw what it actually did to that sine wave. So in the other tests, I went all the way up to negative 50 with long wires. That would be twice as bad. So again, thank you for the question. I hope this made sense the way I explained it. I know this is a lot to unpack in a single video, but I do appreciate you asking the question and watching the full video.